Hey guys, welcome back. For the first time in quite a long time, I'm going to be doing a wrap-up of all of the books I read last month in July. And it's going to be a little different because I'm going to show you guys all of the reading spreads that I made for the books that I read in the month of July. I hadn't originally planned to do this. I never do wrap-ups, mostly because I read too many books and I like to ramble, and then editing becomes a pain in the ass. But I fell into this bad habit of making spreads for the books that I read and then not writing anything in the blank spaces. So come the end of July, I have written nothing in my reading journal, and I thought, why not film myself writing about all of the books I read in July and do a little voiceover to talk you through my thoughts on them. This was a huge McFrickin' mistake, let me tell you guys, because writing 10 spreads nearly killed my hand, let's be honest. Like, by the end of it, my hand was cramping, my penmanship is totally shot, but I decided to stick with it. I had started it, so why not finish with this different wrap-up style? So in the beginning here, you can see me stamping July 2021 on all of the spreads. I don't remember the exact dates that I finished these books, but I finished them all in July, so I just stamped them with the month and the year. Total, I read 10 books in the month of July. I barely read it all during the first half of the month, and then in the last half of the month, I sprinted through 10 books with the help of audiobooks, which is very exciting, and I'll talk about that more in a second. So the first book I read this month was Unravel, the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim, which is the sequel to Spin the Dawn and the final book in the duology. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed it in a very different way than I enjoyed the first book. The first book was magical and beautiful, and we follow this amazing story that intertwines lore and a romance and a story about a girl trying to essentially save her family from any more heartache. And then the second book, we follow the same girl as she's made this mistake and she's kind of living with the consequences of it. And we see her in this really cool descent into madness that I really thought worked well. It was very reminiscent for me of The Bone Witch, which, if you guys didn't know, is my all-time favorite YA fantasy series. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really beautiful way to wrap up the series. Elizabeth Lim has actually now become an auto-buy author for me. That was great. It was a great way to start the month. I then fell into a little bit of a slump, and I had some mental health stuff going on. I was like absolutely ridden with anxiety. But eventually I picked up The Candle and the Flame by Nafisa Azad, and oh my god, it was the perfect book to get me out of a reading slump. It is so beautiful and so atmospheric and so just rich, and I don't know like how to describe how I didn't feel overwhelmed by the story at all. There's a lot that goes on, and it's a very rich and busy world, but at the same time I was so enraptured by the story and what was going on that I did not mind at all. I was hooked from the prologue, which is what I say in the spread. I was hooked from the prologue, and after that I was just in it for the ride. I think this is a beautiful standalone fantasy that really takes advantage of influence from a lot of different cultures and religions, specifically Islam. It's very unapologetically Muslim, which I just really appreciated. The magic that happens in the book, I don't know if it's a magic system per se, because only one person really wields the magic at a time. I absolutely adored that. It was so beautiful to see those scenes and to kind of witness this power and to see the power of names. That was just so beautiful. The commentary was wonderful. I think that the political complexity and all of the family relationships and all of that tension was also really cool. So yeah, this book was just, it blew me out of the water and it pulled me out of my reading slump for sure. The next book I read was The Fever King by Victoria Lee. This is a sci-fi fantasy, urban sci-fi fantasy. Well, it's post-apocalyptic post-apocalyptic sci-fi fantasy. I don't really know what to categorize it, but it's YA. And I was pleasantly surprised by it. I didn't know a lot of what was going on going into it, and then as I was moving through the story, I was like very shocked by a lot of the things that were going on, particularly the commentary. It makes some really good commentary on immigration and what it means to be a quote-unquote illegal alien. I also thought the magic system in this book was definitely really cool. It essentially is 100% based on your knowledge of something. Yeah, I liked it. It was pretty good. I don't know if I'm interested in reading the sequel, but yeah, that was great. The next book I read was the first audiobook I listened to for the month, which was Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyan. And I'm really happy that I'm out of my audiobook slump. I don't know why, but I just haven't listened to a lot of audiobooks this year. And then at the end of this last month, I started listening to audiobooks again, and I was hooked. I learned that there are a lot of books I can read in one sitting via audiobook, so that was kind of nice. I did that a bunch for the rest of the month. Girls, Paper, and Fire was one that I also read physically because, I don't know if you guys know, but AirPods die. They don't last very long. Anyway, so this book follows Lei, and she is essentially conscripted to be a concubine for the Demon King, and the Demon King is not a very good guy, and also this system is just archaic, and there's a lot of strife between the caste systems, and it's, you know, just all around not a great situation. And we follow her as she comes to terms with the situation, but also kind of fights against it, learns how screwed up it is. Like, it's very screwed up from the start, obviously, but it gets even more screwed up, and there's a sapphic romance that I actually really enjoyed. I thought it was really cute, all of the scenes where one of the girls is taking care of the other ones and all of that, and it just does a really good job of exploring kind of how spooky this whole concubine situation is. So essentially, I think every 3 years a group of girls they're taken from their homes and are conscripted to become concubines for the king, and that's all they do. They're not allowed to do anything else. They get in tons of trouble if they do anything else, and also the Demon King sucks. It's not fun to have to be his concubine. So yeah, I really like the exploration of all of the different reactions to being a concubine, and also the world was just very rich and beautiful, and I really like the complexity of the political system and all of the background that was shared in a sort of like storytelling kind of way, like from one character to another. So yeah, I'm super excited. I found the sequel a really good like used paperback copy, and I'm so excited. Like, I got it for like $5, and it was kismet, honestly, because I had just finished this book, and like the next weekend I went to a used bookstore and they had a copy, so I'm super excited to get to the sequel when I have time. The next book I read was one I listened to in a day via audiobook, and that was Three Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake. Kendare Blake. I got this book secondhand a while ago, and I've just been kind of hesitant to pick it up because of the concept. It was really cool to me because the concept is that it's like a battle royale style kingdom where there are 3 different kingdoms. Whoever is in power is decided by whichever queen survives this little battle royale that happens when they turn 16 years old. And each of the queens have different powers. So one queen can survive poisons, one queen can, I guess, like summon creatures and talk to creatures, animals, that kind of thing. And one queen has the power of the elements. We follow them leading up to their birthday, when they will start to try and kill each other as they try to prepare themselves for the fact that they will either die or become the queen of all the kingdoms. And I think that the execution is pretty good. It does become kind of a cringy YA at points. Like, there's a lot of quote-unquote forbidden romances that throw a wrench in things that I think were kind of unnecessary. But ignoring those romances, focusing solely on the story arcs of these girls trying to prepare themselves for a battle royale. Do they utilize their powers as best as possible? That's the interesting part of the story. And this was kind of the start of the books that I read that had this, there's something much bigger going on behind the scenes. Like, obviously Fever King had that kind of mystery element to it as well, but Three Dark Crowns, it's very heavily hinted at that there's some bigger force at work outside of the main characters that you have to start noticing or thinking about. So at the very end, it gets extremely interesting, and I'm actually kind of keen on picking up the rest of the series because it was pretty good. The next book I read was a buddy read with Maury, and we read Want by Cindy Pond. She gifted me a copy, and unfortunately it was not my favorite book that I read last month, and that's disappointing because one, it was a buddy read, and two, I had been gifted a copy by the person I buddy read the book with. Essentially, we're following Jason Joe as he is trying to take down this evil corporation that has manufactured these bodysuits that protect you from pollution and the environment and whatnot, because we are many years in the future where climate change and pollution has pretty much fucked up the air and it makes it unlivable. But someone has capitalized on this issue and created these suits that can only be bought by the extremely wealthy, and thus poor people are dying because they can't breathe the air and they can't survive. That's kind of what saved the book for me. That's the part that I enjoyed, was that commentary on class power. But otherwise, the book kind of falls a little short for me because there is a heavy focus on the romance. Our main character is a dude, and I understand that he's a dude and everything, but he's just so goddamn horny the entire book, and I having fun with it at first, but then I was like, man, people are dying around you. An epidemic starts in the middle of the book, and the suits become a key factor in saving people from this epidemic. Well, he's being horny and going after this girl that he shouldn't, but all the while people around him are like dropping dead. So like, not a huge fan of that. I think I recommend this for people who like fast-paced books or need a fast-paced book to get out of like a reading slump, because I definitely think you could do that. It's one of those books that's a mile long and an inch deep. It doesn't, explore a lot of the nuance. There pretty much is no nuance. Like, the bad guys are very clearly bad guys and the good guys are very clearly good guys. And the love interest is like OP in what she has powers and knowledge of. For me, it's not what I wanted from this book entirely. I did get some of the commentary I liked. There was a diverse cast, like there was a Filipino side character, and I was like, ooh, cool. But I was just disappointed because I was really anticipating this book, and of course when you buddy read something, you want it to be good and have a lot of good things to say about the book, but unfortunately we just ended up kind of ranting about it. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be picking up the sequel. The book wraps up a lot of stuff at the very end to the point where I really don't think there can be a sequel, but I won't be picking it up anyway. The next book I read was quite possibly my favorite read of this month, and that is Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. I have not been so excited to read a book in a very long time. Like, I really enjoy reading, of course, and I always look forward to reading at the end of the day, but I wanted to drop everything and read this book. I was having so much fun with it. I was so immersed. I was so interested in the story. I guess I should back up and tell you that this is a book that follows a young girl named Sunny. She is albino. I think she was born in Nigeria, and then she was raised in the States, and then she moved back with her family to Nigeria. Also, being albino, she is definitely one big other entity to the kids around her. It turns out that she is a leopard person, which is like a magic wielding person. And she gets this entire world opened up to her of magic and monsters and fighting outside of the world that she's familiar with. And it's just such a beautiful story. I hate to make this comparison, but it's kind of like the first Harry Potter book, where Harry Potter is learning about the whole world of Hogwarts. But this is done so much better because, immediately she gets a team together, kind of like Harry, but they use their knowledge to really walk her through the world and to educate her. Which I can't say that Harry's team didn't do, but it was kind of like they were also there to learn too. Meanwhile, Chi-Chi and Orlu, who are the other two kids who have been practicing a lot longer than Sunny, they really help her out, and there's this really strong found family aspect that you immediately get. Another thing that I really liked is that Sunny was a really great main character for someone who has just found out that they're a very powerful magic being. She works her ass off to study the magic system on top of studying in school, like regular human school. In this world, regular humans are called lambs, so there's leopards who are the magic people, and then there's lambs. She works really hard in lamb school and also works really hard to learn leopard magic, and it's just so commendable and so wonderful to see, because you can tell she really cares about having this power and becoming part of this world. Such a wonderful book, such a wonderful magic system, such a wonderful creative world. I cannot sing its praises enough. The next book I read was one I read partially in audiobook and then also physically, and that's The Bells by Danielle Clayton, which I started reading a while ago and I couldn't get into it, but the audiobook definitely helped this time around. It builds a lot more intrigue than reading a physical or ebook copy, because I think you get to really sit on the details and the facts a lot more. In this world, people are born gray and ugly. And then there are these group of girls who are born beautiful, and they also have this arcane ability to make other people beautiful. We follow a cohort, and one of the girls specifically, as she becomes one of these belles of the court, and she begins to do her job in changing people. And this book also follows that theme of there's something big and sinister going on that you can't quite tell yet. And while that was interesting and made me keep reading the book, the main character was kind of frustrating because they don't understand that there is something bigger going on. They're definitely a case of successful brainwashing because they listen to their teachings and what they have been told to a T, and they don't question the world around them. And that was kind of frustrating because there was very obviously something sinister going on. There was a lot of clear bad people who just wanted to use her. But she was naive and would not look past what she has been told or try to think more deeply about it. So that was kind of hard to make the book enjoyable. At the very end of this book, there are more characters like introduced that are given bigger roles. So I think that in like the sequel, the main character of this book will be less of a main character. And so I am interested, unfortunately, in picking up the sequel despite not really enjoying this first book. Now that we're past the naivete, I think it would get a lot better, but this book does have to deal with a lot of the characters' cluelessness and bullheadedness towards the rigidity of their society. It was okay. I think I recommend the audiobook if you do want to pick this book up. The next book I read was another audiobook, and that's The Storyteller by Tracy Chee. Unfortunately, this is the first time I've ever experienced a book series, so this is the final part of a trilogy. And this is the first time I have ever experienced me loving the first book. I liked the second book, and then the very last book I just did not like. And it was so heartbreaking to me because I absolutely adored the first book. Like, it's one of my favorite books of all time. But the third book just falls so short. I don't know if I can explain the series to you without spoiling things, but essentially there's like a war going on and people are dying for reasons. And while this war is going on, people are dying, right? Like, there's a romance that takes the center stage in the third book, and that was so frustrating and disappointing to me. The third book is like 90% these two kids being horny, and I'm sitting there like, you guys are the people who are supposed to be ending this war. Like, this is your purpose as main characters. You're supposed to end this war. Stop wasting time being horny. Like, the more you guys stay horny, the more people die. So stop being horny so people can stop dying. So yeah, that was a big disappointment for me. I won't dwell on it too much. I'm just very sad because I promise you that I wanted to love this book. I really, really wanted to love this book, but unfortunately it just didn't pan out. The last book I read this month was Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. This is the first Julie Kagawa book that I've read, and I really enjoyed it. The synopsis is that we're following Yumeko after her temple is burned down because the temple is guarding a scroll that is highly coveted by evil people, and she is joined by a cast of characters in trying to prevent a prophecy from coming true that would kind of make a lot of people die. I was interested in this book for a while because a lot of people whose opinions I trust have recommended it, and then Justine from Miranda Monologues read it recently, and she said that it was like a fun kind of romp. The thing that stood out to me, what that she said, was that it read like an anime. And I wholeheartedly agree, and because of that, I highly recommend you pick up the audiobook because the audiobook is tons of fun. It's like legitimately like listening to an anime. A lot of the tropes and the way chapters unfold is very anime-esque. Some of the characters, especially the main character, is very anime-esque, which I love. That was so much fun. I think that as an audiobook, that's a really fun experience. So I really recommend this. I love the cast of characters. I love how it unfolded. I love how there were serious and fun, lighthearted moments. And I think as like a lighthearted, fun read, this is just a really good book. I'm super excited to read the rest of the series because after I told everyone that I really enjoyed the first book, a lot of people were like, you're gonna enjoy the rest of the series if you like the first book. So that's really exciting. I know the last book in the trilogy released 1 or 2 years ago. So yeah, can't wait to read the rest of the series. That's it for me. Please enjoy this overview of all my finished spreads. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know this is a very different kind of wrap up, but it was easier for me because I didn't have to get in front of the camera. It was harder for me because my hand is still dead. It's been a while since I filmed this, but my hand is still dead. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you are having a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you next time. Bye!